Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
All right. Hey, Mikey, get over here, man. Let's sit down and have some coffee together.
Let's have some Java.
I hope you brought 2 cups today.
I did. I need a little extra espresso. My favorite step we're talking about today, my friend.
Oh, my. Step 5, right?
Right.
And if we look at the words of step 5, it's admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs.
There's a lot to unpack there, isn't there? There's a lot of words there.
Yeah, and, there's a lot of principles. Folks put some words that kind of summarize each one of these steps, and the principle or words for step 5 is integrity, right? Mm-hmm. And the message that comes out of that is credibility,
right?
So I love to hear your experience on step 5. I mean, frankly, and I'll share mine a little bit, but it's super weak. Every rehab that I went to, is a requirement to do step 4, step 5 before you left. So I did 4 or 5 of them, and they were bullshit. I was trying to do it to impress. I tried to give 32-page step 4s, and I wanted to win some award for the sexiest step 4 out there. And when I sat down with my counselor and did step 5, I mean, they were probably checking their phone, right? And then so when I came around to do it really with my sponsor, like the wind was let out of the sail. We just kind of got through it. But your story of step 5 is a game changer.
Yeah, it was really impactful. It was a game changer, a life changer for me, and I didn't anticipate that. I mean, having worked through the first 3 steps, really in the first 30, 60 days of my sobriety, and then as we shared before, sitting on step 4, I sat on that for a couple of months because the words fearless and thorough were taught to me and beat into my head, and I wanted to do it right. So when it came time to the 5th step, I thought to myself, okay, well, this is just a process. It's a 3-phase process of confession, if you will. And but little did I know what was in store for me when I went through the process. I presented it to myself a little bit backwards, Glenn. It says to admit to God, 1, to ourselves, number 2, and number 3, to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs, right? So identifying the exact nature of my wrongs was really the pain point for me. That was the pain point for me, was going through my inventory. And for me, as I mentioned last week, I did it sequentially, but I ended up with if it were dumped into a spreadsheet, I ended up with this big, long, detailed spreadsheet of all these deeds done wrong,
I hope you password protected that.
Oh, it's on Google. It's on Google Drive. Just go ahead and loop into it.
It's out there in public domain now,
yeah,
right? Nice.
But, so for me...
Well, why don't we do this?
Yeah.
Why don't we break this down into 3 buckets, right?
Oh, that'll help.
To God, to ourselves, and to another human being. Right. So let's talk about admission to yourself first. What did that look like? Right.
That's a great question. And my experience to admitting it to myself was to really own it and say, okay, what was my role in this activity? What was my role in this experience? And it was eye-opening for me, Glenn. It was eye-opening for me because I think I had accumulated these experiences, and for the most part, I had left and right cushions on each one of these experiences that left was this person's fault and the right was this person's fault.
And it was never yours.
It was never mine. Never mine.
So a lifetime of problems.
Lifetime of problems.
It's always left or right, somebody else's issue.
That's right. It's circumstantial. Somebody else did me wrong. Something else had transpired that was out of my control.
Yep.
You know? And so for me, admitting to myself, not just admitting to myself the exact nature of my wrongs, but my role in that.
Your ownership.
That's right. And you know, the big book has kind of these columns that they example out there on, you know, somewhere in the 50s, page 58 or 59, and or wherever that's found. I don't know. I'm not a big book thumper, so I know it's a page number out there, but it doesn't really. It talks about the column, but it doesn't really spell it out. So yeah, that was big for me, was admitting my role in the problem, and that was painful, Glenn. It was a painful process for me.
So which is bigger? Which was harder to do after that, right? So that's hard, right?
Yeah.
To say, hey, I actually have ownership in some of this shit that I lived in. In fact, you probably created a lot of it, right?
Sure, absolutely.
So was it harder to admit to God or to somebody else? Which was the harder one?
Oh, yeah. You know, for me anyway, it was a breeze admitting it to another human being, the exact nature of my wrongs. Yeah. I found...
To pull down your pants and show all your shit stains to somebody else, that was easy.
Well, you know, as you put it that way, it was smelly, but it was easy. You know, let me put it this way. If it wasn't presented to another alcoholic, I wouldn't have deemed it easy. But because I was sitting across from somebody who had already admitted to me that they weren't perfect, had already admitted to me that anything that I said was A, going to be confidential, and B, wasn't going to shock them, right? Because they've been around the program. My sponsor, I was blessed to have a sponsor who had 20 plus years of sobriety, you know, and he's heard some war stories out there. So I didn't feel I was coming to him with anything that was really going to rock his world.
Yeah, you know, that's probably for me, you know, I was so prideful, right? It's hard to let somebody in and see the full, you know, and when I was in rehab, I didn't care what the counselors, well, I did care, but, you know, I knew the following week or the following session, they would have forgotten about me. And when I got around to with my sponsor, it just wasn't that big because I was so used to telling all the, you know, shit stories. But, you know, that was probably bigger for me, right? To do that to somebody else. So why don't you share the, you know, with God being the biggest, right? God as you understand him, your higher power, how you define him. How is that the biggest, the most challenging?
Well, you know,
and what happened?
Sure, right. I scheduled the time with myself through step 4, and then I scheduled the time with my sponsor and admitted him. I never scheduled time with God. I never scheduled that time to sit down and really kind of, and I found that days went by and weeks went by and then ultimately months went by and I wasn't scheduling that time. And you know, I started to ask myself, why is that? Why have I not scheduled the time? Why can't I do this? I mean, my higher power, my God, is omnipresent. He's omni-knowing. He knows everything. He knows what I did yesterday and what I'm going to do tomorrow, right? So what's the big hang-up here?
So with your beliefs, he knows exactly what you're going to say.
He already knew.
But you still had a problem saying it.
Yeah, so it should, in theory, it should have taken me about 2 seconds to say, okay, God, all right, yeah, all those things, okay, we know, okay, we're good, move on.
Well, what was it?
I couldn't do it.
Ego?
I couldn't
was
do it. Fear?
Fear.
Yeah, I think it was fear. I think it was ego. I think it was, I hadn't learned to deal with the shame, the guilt, the remorse of my actions. And I had gone, at that point, I had advanced through the steps where I had this knowledge of what honesty was all about. And I had to get honest with my higher power. I had to get honest with God. And that was the hardest thing. So you know, Glenn, one of the things that I never thought I would do in my life, I went to a retreat, an AA retreat, and it was up at a beautiful little lake house up in northern Illinois in the fall. And I didn't really have a strategic plan going into that event, but where I found myself was I found myself with a lot of quiet time, because the guys would get together and they'd have coffee, and I'd have coffee, and I just kind of would drift away, and I found myself having these quiet times. And I found this perfect moment in time. I didn't plan it. Perfect moment in time where I just sat down and I literally cried my prayer and admitted to God the exact nature of my wrongs. And, the real special part of that story is that I did all my step work in a spiral binder. My sponsor demanded that, and when he demanded, I listened. And I put it all in a spiral binder. And that Saturday night, there was a bonfire. And I took my book, which I still had to do. By the way, don't try this at home. I still had to do steps 6, 7, 8, 9, right? And a lot of that data
10,
was
11,
in that
12.
book. Yeah, I threw the binder. 10, 11, 12. I threw the whole binder right in the fire, because I wanted that release. I wanted that to be gone. And I watched it go up in smoke. And the next morning, Glenn, I went back to the bonfire pit, and it was still smoldering. And the only thing that was left there was the spiral ring.
Nice.
And I keep that in my car with me, and it reminds me that I'm good with the past. I made right with the past. It took me longer than the average bear, but I'm good. I came to a point of truth and honesty with myself, with another human being, and with the God of my understanding. And what a relief that was. What freedom that gave me. What a lift off of my shoulders, because I knew we were good going forward.
So I love that. I love the picture of the spiral remaining, right? I talked to my sponsor a lot about, the past, and one of his examples I love is, hey, Glenn, when you drive a car, the windshield is this big and the rearview mirror is this big.
Yeah, right?
And he's like, that's how much you should really focus on the past. Use it as learning, use it as experience to help others. Don't dwell on it, right? Focus on the windshield. And I'm really taking that out of your bonfire story. The fact that all the book and all the pages,
sure,
were kind of, burned, not kind of, but burned up, right? Released from all the stuff that was on those pages. But yet you still have a reminder. You have a little piece of that.
That's right.
Right, that you can take with you.
That's right.
And say, and remind yourself, that part of your step 5.
That's right. When
God part.
That's right. When I want to hold on to it myself, when I want to go drudge myself through that history one more time, I just pick up the spiral and say it's been drudged through. Move on.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. So let's switch gears to the, we talked about your experience. We've talked about some of the things that you did. Let's switch gears to hope, right? So doing step 5, admitting to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. And man, that is tough to do.
Right.
But it's so important. That step 4 and step 5. Where does that leave you today, right? Dealing with the past, and then also how do you deal with today and going forward with things that come up, right? When you talk about nature of our wrongs, I'm not sure if you're perfect today. I don't think so.
Right? No,
right? So you still do stuff wrong. So how do you balance all that together?
That's right. I'm a step behind perfect. The way I look at it is this. I start out a day with a pure glass of water, and I'm surrounded in this pure metaphoric glass of water. And along the day, I will murk that water up. But the quickest that I can filter that murky water out, as long as I've got a filter process, right? So, as we're gonna, as we know, there's a step of review, and a maintenance step, and so I never let the water get that murky. Because it only got murky once in my life, right? That was the one time that water was really murky, and so for me, I live in clean water now because I won't allow myself to be in an unfiltered glass of water. There's always got to be a process. I'll make mistakes, but then clean them up right away. And the level of freedom that has given me it's just indescribable. It's indescribable.
Yeah, so you pretty much do step 5 on a regular basis now.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, positively. I must, and maybe it's not my sponsor, it's going to be the next struggling alcoholic that I'm going to share. Hey, here was my Merc today. Here was the Merc and Mud that I created today.
Today's Merc
and Mud. That's right.
Yeah, well, that's great. That's and that's something where going forward, living step 5. For me, when I first did it, I thought it was a point in time, and as I've progressed, down the path of sobriety, it's an ongoing thing.
It is, right?
And then I've also found, step 5. Again, mine wasn't very impactful, but I've had the opportunity and privilege to do some step 5s, to be the recipient,
sure,
of those step 5s, and. Man, I'll tell you what, that's one of the most powerful things. First of all, that somebody would trust you with their baggage, with their shit, with their innermost, wrongs, is amazing to me, right? I think that's something that's earned. I think that's, a respect. And so that's amazing. And I take them very seriously. In fact, that's probably one of the most emotional things I go through today is listening to somebody's step 5.
Right.
It's setting the time aside. It's preparing mentally, praying for the dude, and then sitting there, just listening, not interjecting not my thoughts or, just listening.
Just listening, right. And it's, in this day and age, in the day of Facebook, right, where everything looks perfect, everybody's life looks so perfect, to be unveiling imperfections is tough, but so rewarding to get through.
Yeah, the steps of this program and working this program really help clean up the past. And steps 4 and 5, I like to say are one of the keys. I think they're all key, but
sure.
Step 5 is to trust somebody to do that, is a big thing. And then to also see that, again, it turns the dial from faith to fact.
Yeah, right.
To see that, hey, I trusted, my sponsor, Tim, with this information, and he hasn't told anybody.
Right.
That's rare in this world, right? It's only on somebody else's Facebook in 30 minutes, right?
That's right.
So, it's a lot of proof. It's a lot of facts.
Oh.
Love hearing your story. I didn't really hear all of that up till now, and man, I love that spiral. I love that spiral. That's something you can take with you. And it's a point in time where you just released it all, and you just release it, to God, to yourself. I think that's a key part of it to it.
Sure.
And another human being. So, brother, thanks for stopping by for some coffee,
man.
Thanks
Step
for having
5.
me this morning. I love hearing your story.
Yeah.
All right,
man.
See you next time.
All right, sounds good, Glenn.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@Sober.Coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.